Follow the Leader is the lead up to the season finale, and in this episode I will cover the paradoxical nature of the compass. I'll also explore that the state of the compass might have been an inspiration of the feature-length sci-fi film The Incident that premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in 2014. But we'll also figure out how we can solve the compass. Check the time codes if you want to skip directly to that. We're also going to cover who built the Jughead chamber, the mystical departure of Horace Goodspeed, how Kate managed to get back to the barracks, and the various locations shown in the episode. Let's dive in.
What if this is our one chance to put things back the way they're supposed to be?
Younger Widmore and another hostile find Jack and Kate watching in the bushes and put them in a tent, where Eloise asks why Daniel needed the bomb. Jack explains that he can change things by detonating it.
I'll kill you.
Mr. Rosensky, there's still no sign of Miles or Jen.
Mitch discovers Jack, Kate, and Hurley were last-minute entries to the sub's manifest. Meanwhile, Hurley gathers food for he, Miles, and Jean to escape to the beach. I deduce that Hurley was here in the food locker at the cafeteria before heading to his house to grab some stuff. Maybe his house is over here, and then meet up with Jean and Miles. Dr. Chang follows them while they go up this hill behind the houses.
Who's the President of the United States?
All right, dude, we're from the future. Sorry.
It's true then?
And when he discovers they are really from the future, he evacuates the island. Eloise, Eric, and Richard take Jack and Kate and head into the jungle again. They arrive here at the Waihe waterhole. In terms of filming locations, the Waihe River is close by the various filming locations from Anne Found, as well as the beach where Anna cried in the episode The Other 48 Days. I've placed it here so the river could branch into this dangerous river that Rousseau has noted on the map. Said shoots Eric and joins the rest of the team. Kate refuses to join them and returns to Dharma, going this way. When Chang gives the order to evacuate, LaFleur demands to be put on the sub, then he will tell them what they want to know.
Draw me a map. I want to know exactly where the hostiles are.
I'm curious what LaFleur drew. Maybe just a way into this territory like this. I think Horace takes over this map, since Radzinski has absolutely no time to deal with this issue now. He's supposed to go to the Swan, since they are about to break ground. Let's look at some of the off-screen travels. Radzinski will travel down to the Swan, possibly with a Dharma bus. At the same time, Kate is returning to the barracks. And here's my theory on what transpired. By now, they would start ferrying people to the submarine dock. Kate would probably be able to go back to the barracks through the sonic fence, since they likely briefly turned it off to let all the vans come in and out. This also enables Hurley, Miles, and Jin to leave through the sonic fence undetected, although Miles and Jin knew about the code anyway. Horace probably looked at the map that LaFleur drew. Kate goes to LaFleur's house and sees that James is gone. It seems wild that Kate actually went back to the barracks after the shootout, but she doesn't know that LaFleur and Juliet's cover is blown up. She probably thinks that LaFleur still has managed to fool Radzinski and his goons. Horace spots her and brings her into the house. Kate asks where they took James, and Horace probably told her that they sent him on the sub, and in return Kate would tell Horace everything. My theory is that she told them that they needed to take Ben to the hostiles, so they could heal him. I like the idea that this was at Horace and Amy's house, since this could put a seed into Amy's mind that the hostiles can be helpful to the children, because at some point Ethan will defect to them. We don't know if he came there with his mother or not, but if you subscribe to the theory that Amelia is Amy but older, then Amy will slowly start to turn towards the hostiles over the coming years. While explaining, Kate didn't even have to mention the temple or that Richard mentioned that Ben will always be one of them, that his innocence will be lost. She might have said that the hostiles had remedies that Dharma didn't have at the time. Kate could also tell them that if they are to retrieve Ben, they should do it peacefully, without guns. Horace probably wondered what happened to the Ann Arbor scientist, Faraday, who disappeared before going to the Swan, and she told him he got shot after he strolled in with a gun. You see, despite the visibility of Horace Goodspeed and him being the leader of the Dharma Initiative on the island, he's just mysteriously gone in the season 5 finale. He's not the one directing orders to the Dharma Initiative, like he did after the fire. Phil does this instead. I believe that he changed his clothes, leaves his uniform, which Saeed will take, and then he takes Kate to the security office. He tells Phil about it all, sends him with Kate to the dock, while he decides to walk to the hostiles unarmed and with a plea for them to return Ben. Meanwhile, the Jughead team has gone through the various tunnels. In the episode Dead is Dead, I proposed a theory that the first chamber that was built was the Cerberus chamber, located underneath the temple, and was sealed off many years later, and that the Egyptians that were brought to the island saw the various hieroglyphs about Ani and his journey to the underworld, and copied it to the various pillars in the tunnels. I also like the idea that the tunnels mimic some sort of journey to the underworld, and one passage is through this pool of water over here. They enter the Jughead chamber, which should be located underneath the barracks. It's a grandiose chamber, which looks like some sort of chapel in its design. I also think that this chamber was created after this one, since it has a much more complicated construction, with its arc-based construction. Barrel vaults, as they are called, is still an ancient practice and can be found in ancient Egypt. However, it was used extensively in Roman architecture. I actually really like the idea that the tunnels and the chambers were created by several people across many decades, even centuries. It's an enormous project, carving around stone and lava rocks, but this chamber has the classical barrel roof formed around the volcanic rocks here, as well as being a groin vault. A groin vault is formed by the intersection of two or more barrel vaults, resulting in the formation of angles or groins along the lines of transition between the webs. Roman architects used the arc and the dome to make buildings that were typically strong and well engineered, and we see how they still stand 2000 years later. The intersecting and groin vault of the Romans was employed in the early Christian churches in Rome. We don't know what they used this chamber for when they built it. It could have been a tomb or place of worship. One thing we do know is that this place had an entrance to the above ground level.
Tell me how we're gonna get a bomb out of here?
The same way we brought it in.
I assume you don't mean through the pool.
It's a 12-foot long, 40,000-pound hydrogen bomb. No, not through the pool.
They dug up some sort of road, a large tunnel down to this chamber, likely to transport large quantities of limestone during the building process. They also built the summoning chamber, so there is likely a mechanism in this area which is connected to the water and light coming from the heart of the island. It remained like this for many years until 1954, when the others transported the 20-ton Jughead bomb down there. They had these contraptions on wheels that they managed to pull, a process that would take a lot of the strength and effort from all of them. It could be that the chamber possibly has 3 or even 4 entrances. We only see 2 here, but it makes sense to me that there's one each on the opposite sides, especially when we look at these types of architectural designs other places. One of them could be the road down where they wheeled the bomb. After they had done it, I believe that they sealed everything with rocks to avoid the radiation. Another one probably went to the other tunnels, connected to the rest of the system all around the island. This one is also boarded up with rocks. The third one they didn't board up since it only connected to Horace's house, but to access it, they need to go through the water hole. We see that the barracks are located here, built on top of this area. It seems pretty ridiculous that they managed to build an entire village on top of a chamber that housed a hydrogen bomb. First of all, the Dharma Initiative had not signed the truce yet, so they didn't break any rules by building here. In earlier videos, I talk about the idea that they could have planned to build the barracks down here in the Golf Course Valley, and then changed plans and found this area instead. The Dharma barracks needed to be built anyway, so the time loop of the entire show had to have happened. Let's say that the monster found Charlotte's body in ancient times and scanned her memories. He would have known in advance that Charlotte would live several years over here with the Dharma Initiative. Or a more recent event. There's over a dozen corpses at the beach in 1954 with knowledge of the barracks. The island knew that the Dharma barracks existed in this spot for decades. Heck, maybe even 2000 years ago. Whatever happened, the initiative had to build the barracks here, since that is the place it had to have been. If the hostiles stepped in, told them that they couldn't build the barracks and had to live underground in the stations, then how could she remember her day at the swing set, seeing Daniel Faraday?
I've been here before.
You've been here before?
I grew up here.
when she was part of the initiative. It would be a paradox. We don't know how the hostiles reacted to them building the barracks, but I believe that Jacob, who surely must have known about the time loop, gave instructions to Richard. Then some of them might have been letting the Dharma initiative build the barracks, ensuring them that nothing will happen. Something that Eloise would confirm, since Daniel Faraday told her.
You want to take care of this bomb, you bury it.
How'd you know that?
Because 50 years from now, this island is still here.
I also like the idea that the Swan needed to be built, despite being in hostile territory. Sooner or later, the hostiles would learn about them drilling there. I mean, all this equipment, all that noise, it was bound to happen, but they would still be able to finish the station well out of the incident. The Swan had to be built, so we don't create a paradox. I will talk more about paradoxes later when we discuss the compass, but first let's just go back to the episode. The evacuees board a sub, including young Charlotte with her mother, Lara Chang comes too with baby Miles, and LaFleur and Juliet. Kate arrives there and boards the sub. I think that Hurley, Miles and Jin sees this and realize that something went wrong. Kate went with Jack and Faraday. If she got apprehended, then maybe they believe that Jack and Faraday are locked up in the security office. They are gonna hang out here until the coast is clear, and then will decide to board one of the Dharma buses that are here. The sub prepares to depart for Ann Arbor, and what follows is, in my opinion, the worst CGI of the show. The PlayStation submarine goes down underwater and the camera turns to see the entire ocean. Hold on for a second. The submarine bay is absolutely enclosed by trees and grass. We see that numerous times. It is technically a blooper, and you can see that I've tried to fix that blooper a little bit with having the trees go around like this, so that it looks like it's completely enclosed by jungle. And in my headcanon, the shot of the submarine is a little bit later. The shot of the PlayStation submarine going down should be around here. It maneuvers out of the wharf like this, and then travels a bit, and then out in the open water where it submerges. I know it's a stretch, especially since we can see the dock in the background. How can we do that if the submarine is over here in the open water? Well, we can chalk it up as blooper, but in my headcanon, this dock is not the one the submarine came from, but another dock it passed. It's this one, and you can go check my previous videos. It's been on my map since the very beginning of this YouTube series. I think there has to be one dock on the island we didn't see on screen at all, because we have this enormous trawler that is docked somewhere in the 2000s. In the 2000s, I believe it is docked over here, after they picked up all the others as well as Jack in Stranger in a Strange Land. So if we flash back to 2004, I believe that the trawler took them over here, then docked down here, and then they all traveled on foot, carrying Ben Linus to the barracks. And they just left the trawler there. But in 1977, the trawler could be anywhere else. Maybe it's docked at the Pala Ferry dock. Anyway, this is a stretch, I know, because this dock is obviously meant to be the submarine dock from the show's perspective and not a brand new dock. And the VFX guys just forgot that this wharf is technically not open to the ocean. I mean, you can see it in the filming location, but I'm just proposing this wild theory instead. And then the PlayStation submarine travels out and upwards. Hurley, Jin and Miles take their chance and then drive to the barracks and wait there until they can sneak into the security office to see if Jack and Faraday are there. We need to let them wait a little bit, since there's some hours worth of events that need to have happened before Jack and Saeed comes out with a bomb. The timing of the events in this episode, and especially in the finale, is a little bit of a head scratcher. Let's move to the present. 2007. After successfully pulling Ben out of the Cerberus chamber, Man in Black Locke need to find Richard Alpert so that he can complete the time loop of the compass and to forward it to a living time-traveling Locke. I wonder if there is an off-screen scene where Ben and Locke go to this door over here. The temple others already know about the Azure plane, and Ben might have asked someone if Richard is at the temple. Maybe this guard with a turban. He came into the temple tunnels to grab Jack and Kate in the season 6 premiere, and they would learn that Richard has a separate group somewhere else, and possibly this guy would tell them where they have camped. Locke, Ben and Son go down south to the other speech camp. They will trek for a while, go through here, through this jungle area. The camp is way down south, but since they went to the temple during morning, then this should be much later in the day. Things are going fast on the island these days, which will be more apparent next season. On their way, Man in Black Locke kills a boar and takes it with them. This time they pass this scourge area and then arrive at the beach. This harkens back to season 1, the first boar that was presented as a meal to the group. It's like a religious offering, presented as a gift to the community. The Man in Black as the monster slays the boar in the walkabout and drops it on the ground, faces John Locke, and then Locke brings it to the group. This act of generosity is a sign of faith and humility. Here we can see that Man in Black is tricking everyone by giving a symbol of respect, demonstrating an act of kindness that mimics the attributes of Locke, the boar hunter. I've placed their camp over here, and that's mainly for the obscure trek they do to the photo statue. The others like to move around, so I don't see a problem with that. In 2004 they briefly stayed at the decoy village, the Hydra, the barracks, the ruins, and then to Pascal Flats, then to the temple, and then a large group of them moved here near the orchid for a brief time. Some of these places they might go to have some cultural and historical importance to them. Setting up the decoy village over here could work with the history here, since the rock with a hole in it seems like it was part of a house, an ancient house that got destroyed at some point, and the ruins were of historical importance. As well as this area near the orchid. In my video on the rope bridge, I mentioned the theory that there was an Inca population on the island who built the rope bridge. They might have settled around here in this area. This also fits with the cable location in season 3, also filmed at Maculea Beach, and these mountains that fit with this location. Ben tells Sun that Richard has been their advisor for a very long time.
Were you here? Do you remember them? Any of them?
Yes, I was here 30 years ago. And I remember these people. I remember meeting them very clearly because I watched them all die.
This is something I'll come back to next week when we come to the incident. The others had some spare clothing that fit Locke. He changes and says to Sun that they didn't go through this for nothing. I think they'll go the quickest way through here, passing the jungle where Locke first met the master in Walkabout, Shannon's death site, the main valley, before they entered the jungle over here. The time-traveling Locke appears. Richard talks to him, giving him the instructions and the compass before they all head back, going the same path again. Upon returning to the camp, Locke gives a speech to the others. He tells them that he is going to find Jacob and wants everyone to join him. And now the craziest object on the show.
I gave you this.
Yes,
After you were shot in the leg and I wandered out of the jungle to patch you up?
that's right.
Throughout this season, we've explored objects that have time traveled in fun ways. A 1954 machete that was stuck in a tree and that someone took, the outrigger that went through time, Sawyer bringing the rope from the 20th century and back 2000 years. And we're still not done. Saeed brings Horace Goodspeed's uniform to 2007, as well as Hurley, by leaning onto the Dharma van, will bring the entire van and its contents 30 years into the future. But there's an object that has been a head scratcher for the Lost fans. The compass. The compass is, as a physical object, impossible. Richard has it in his pocket for 50 years. It's getting slightly rusty.
You still have that compass I gave you?
A little rusty, but you can still find north.
Until he gives it to Locke, who in the next day will give it to Richard, who will keep it in his pocket for 50 years while it's getting slightly rusty. Until he gives it to Locke, who in the next day will give it to Richard, who will keep it in... yeah, you get the idea. This was brought up on the podcast and is something that the writers were aware of, and the compass exists in a self-contained loop. It has no maker. It just exists.
This is a fascinating question and one we spent way too many hours in the room discussing. We do not want to remove the shade of mystery for you guys. All we can say first is that what we have done with the compass is absolutely intentional in terms of sort of the broader themes of the show. But more importantly, there are certain things in mathematics and in time travel, like Fermat's last theorem, for example, that are very, very difficult to try to explain. They are sort of fascinating puzzles that lack solution. And the compass is one of them. It is purposely perplexing, but it has no origin. Because if Locke essentially gave it to Alpert and Alpert gave it to Locke, then where did it come from? And I think the larger question is, what is its state of decay? And I think that is an area where we could have called the props department in Hawaii and tried to explain what it was we were trying to do, but they would have shot us and basically said, we don't understand. Like, does the compass always have to look the same? Because the fact of the matter is Alpert holds on to it for 50 years.
Right.
So at a certain point, it degrades. And then...
Even if it is in a Mobius loop.
It is in a Mobius loop, an infinite loop.
Yeah.
So if you're asking the question, where did the compass come from, we put this question to you. Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
The idea that it is in a Mobius loop is a very intentional motif.
I think that is so fascinating and a bold choice for a TV series on a network television with a mass appeal that decides to do something unconventional and artistic. This idea is also further highlighted in Daniel's Jughead plan, detonating Jughead to prevent the Swan being built and Flight 815 from crashing is impossible to work since they are in the 70s, detonating Jughead as a result of crashing on the island. Luckily the show didn't fall into a paradoxical hole on that one and solved it by them getting blasted to the present.
Could a human being change what has happened before? Interesting and theoretical, because whoever heard of a man going back in time? Before tonight, that is. Because this is the Twilight Zone.
Some years ago, I discovered the Mexican sci-fi film The Incident. Intrigued by the title and the concept, I assumed that it was all a coincidence. Lost fans love to connect everything to their show. Like, even though the character's tattoo says late, fate, or that one of the characters' names is Daniel, and he likes to play with this pet, it doesn't have to be a reference to Lost. But then I discovered that the director Isaac Esban is a Lost fan, and cites Lost as a major influence behind this film.
Like, for example, Lost, I'm a huge fan of Lost, and I like how they make a lot of references to book. There are many episodes from Lost where you see that there's a book there.
Yeah,
like
it's a specific book, and it means it's
like it means something. Yeah, and even the episodes from Lost, you know, you could tell that they have some episodes from Lost are titled like a book, like A Tale of Two Cities, The Shape of Things to Come.
So let's look at it from Lost Eyes. We follow two storylines. One being 3 people running down a staircase. The other one is this family on their way to the beach. In the first storyline, the characters chase each other, and then they hear a sound, an explosion, and realize that the staircase just keeps going in a loop, from the 9th floor to the 1st. An impossible staircase that just goes in an infinite loop. This staircase is just like the compass. It never ends. We are in the real world at first, but then we are thrown into something supernatural. And in the other storyline, something mysterious happened. On their way to Jacob's cabin, yes, this is a clear reference to Lost, confirmed by the director. And here it says, "I love you, Penelope." At some point, the daughter has a reaction and needs her inhaler. Her brother forgot to bring the spare, so they drive back home to get the inhaler. But the road just keeps on going. Past the sign and past the gas station over and over again. An idea like this was also the basis of the TV show From, which many have likened to Lost, especially with Lost director Jack Bender being an executive producer. The car's license plate is OCA A15, as in Oceanic Airlines. The jumpsuit with the name Hugo is found at a gas station called The Pearl. And this book was written by James Ford Sawyer. And the music, well, the music sounds very Lostian. The entire soundtrack is on Spotify and on YouTube, so I advise you to listen to it. There's so many Lostian moments in the score. But yeah, I think that things like the compass and the ideas that are tossed around in season 4 and season 5 heavily influenced the movie The Incident, which premiered in Cannes and then in various film festivals later on. A film or TV show is still free to add a magical or an impossible object if it's there to illustrate a theme or an idea. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is known for this. The hotel layout is impossible. Hallways, rooms, and windows intertwine and just don't make sense at all. After several fans had spotted it, executive producer Jan Harlan said that the set was very deliberately built to be offbeat and off the track, so that a huge ballroom would never actually fit inside. This room is therefore impossible. You have other crazy unexplained elements in films, like the gigantic spider in Enemy, the mysterious box in Barton Fink, or the blue box that appears out of thin air in Mulholland Drive. All of these have some meaning to them, despite their ambiguous nature. In the movie Nope, there's a shoe that seemingly defies gravity. Even director Jordan Peele has called this the impossible shot, and has talked about the thematic value of this shoe. There's a lot of symbolic readings out of all of these examples. You have even wilder and more humorous examples, such as King Arthur, who lived over 1,000 years ago, getting apprehended by the police at the end of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. These people are technically separated by 1,000 years and impossible to coexist, but they are depicted here for the absurd comedy. And if you go deeper into surrealist cinema, you'll find tons of stuff that should not exist in the diegetic realm that is presented to us, but is there for another purpose. They have symbolic value. Just like a visionary auteur, the writers of Lost decided to give the show something that should not exist. Something that is a contradiction. The impossible compass exists in another realm. But if you don't want a paradoxical answer, then we need to apply a fan theory, and here's one that I like. Chronologically speaking, in 1954, Richard is given a compass by John Locke. He keeps it in his pocket for decades. Each year it gets rustier. Sometimes during that time, let's say in 1997, Richard goes to London on some Mitlo's business. He still has that old compass, maybe it's still back on the island, almost forgotten. He meets up with Eloise in her little shop. She either presents a vast array of compasses that are identical to the one that he has back on the island, or she manufactures a brand new compass identical to the one he has. Anyway, we are presented a situation where the compass has been manufactured, and Eloise Hawking knows some future events. She insists that he needs to buy this compass, keep it a secret, and to give it to John Locke, and only this compass on the day you meet at the Nigerian beechcraft 10 years from now. A little bit confused by it, but he knows that Miss Hawking has a sense of the future. And he also knows that some characters will time travel on the island. He certainly would know about time paradoxes by now. He knows that the Jughead plan did not work, the incident still happened 20 years ago, and that there will be a bunch of characters who will come to the island to play out the events in the past. That includes Miss Hawking's son, Daniel Faraday, who just graduated from Oxford the year before and has started using the notebook. So he trusts Miss Hawking. He buys that brand new compass. By now, he has 2 compasses, although he might not even know that they are the same, or maybe he knows. 10 years pass, and the compass Locke gave him has gotten even rustier, but it still points north, while the one Eloise Hawking gave him still looks very new. When Man in Black Locke asks if he has the compass he gave him,
You still have that compass I gave you?
he picks that up. Not the one that Eloise gave him, the one that he gave him. It's in his right pocket. The other one, let's say it's in his back pocket, is not the one that Locke gave him, it's the one Eloise gave him. When they go to the beechcraft, Richard realizes that he's about to enter a temporal loop, something that Eloise Hawking as a character represents with her Ouroboros pin eating his own tail. If he gives Locke the rusty compass, he'll create a paradox. This is why he has to switch and give Locke the new compass Eloise gave him, the one in the back pocket and not the rusty one in the right front pocket. Now that that's out of the way, Richard goes back to the group. He still has one rusty compass in his front pocket, while the brand new one from 1997 is time traveling. It might be a possibility that the end of the compass is towards the end of the series, when Richard is thrown across the barracks by the smoke monster and possibly got broken during the fall. So if you want a non-paradoxical answer, then the compass had to have a beginning. It has a maker, it goes like this, going in a loop like this, and that Richard switched up the compasses to avoid the temporal paradox, and then the compass has an end. But honestly, I really like the paradoxical answer, the impossible compass. It's very bold and interesting, and reminds me of something that people like Kubrick, Jodorowsky, David Lynch, Louis Buñuel, Charlie Kaufman, and many others would likely do. The impossible compass is very fascinating to me. What do you think? Next week will be the final one for the season before a break, the season 5 finale. If you'd like, you can share this video and subscribe if you haven't already.